Hey gang, this is Deke McClelland. Welcome to Deke's Techniques. This week, I'll show you how to create synthetic water droplets inside Photoshop. So the wood grain in the background, that's an actual photograph, but the droplets themselves are 100% fabricated. I'm going to start off in this movie by showing you how to create the drops. Now you might look at this and say, well, these don't look much like drops. They will. And you can imagine that this kind of pattern might adapt itself to all kinds of different situations. You could create spots or contour lines, what have you. Every time you follow these steps, you're going to get different results, and there's no drawing involved. It's all a combination of 3 filters and 2 adjustment layers. Here, let me show you exactly how it works. Here's the final water drop effect, just so you can see it on screen. We're going to start off inside of this image. It comes to us from the Fotolia image library, about which you can learn more at fotolia.com/Deke. But really, any texture background is going to work. First thing you want to do is make the image a little bigger than it currently is, just so you have some additional room to work. So I'm going to go ahead and convert this image to a layer by double-clicking on background here inside the layers panel. And I'll just call this guy wood, and then click OK. And now we want to make the image bigger. I'll go ahead and zoom out so that we can see what I'm talking about. I'll go up to the image menu and choose the canvas size command. I'm working in pixels, as you can see here. I've got the relative checkbox turned on, and I'm going to change the width value to 100, and then I'll tab to the height value and change it to 100 as well. And that'll expand the canvas 100 pixels in each direction. That is 50 pixels up, 50 pixels down, and so forth. Now I'll click OK. And you can see that extra room represented by the transparency grid in the background. Next, what you want to do is create a new layer by pressing Control-Shift-N or Command-Shift-N on the Mac. And I'll call this layer grayness because that's what it's going to be. And then you click OK. And now we want to fill this layer with gray by going up to the Edit menu and choosing the Fill command. And change Use to 50% gray, very important. And then the blending options ought to be set to their defaults, that is a mode of normal, opacity 100%. Preserve transparency needs to be turned off, or else we won't actually be able to do anything. Then click OK in order to create that field of gray. Now we want to apply a couple of filters. Might as well apply them as smart filters. So make sure the grayness layer is selected here inside the Layers panel. Then go to the panel's flyout menu and choose Convert to Smart Object. Now go up to the Filter menu, choose Noise, and choose Add Noise. And for this effect, you want to crank the amount value up to 50%. Distribution should be set to uniform, and then you want the monochromatic checkbox to be on. Then click OK. The next step is to go back to the filter menu, choose Blur, and choose Gaussian Blur. For this effect, I'm going to crank the radius value up to 28 pixels. I'll show you that you can vary this value in just a moment, but for now, 28 pixels, I'll click OK. Now, we're going to need room inside of our layers panel, so I don't need this empty filter mask. So I'll just go ahead and right-click on it and choose Delete Filter Mask in order to get rid of it. So the last thing this looks like at this point is water drops, but we're going to change that by pressing the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac. And then you want to click on this black-white circle at the bottom of the layers panel and choose the Threshold command. And because you have Alt or Option down, you'll see the New Layer dialog box. Go ahead and call this guy Drop Maker, and then turn on this checkbox, Use Previous Layer to create clipping mask, and click OK. And then you want to change the threshold value here inside the Properties panel. This would be the Adjustments panel inside previous editions of Photoshop. Go ahead and raise it to 129 in order to produce this effect here. Now, your drops may look different than mine because we're applying a random effect. That is to say, Add Noise applies a random effect. And now I'll go ahead and hide the Properties panel. Now here's what I was talking about with Gaussian Blur. You can change that value by double-clicking on it in order to bring up the Gaussian Blur dialog box. And now notice if you dial in some other value, like I'll dial in 12, you're going to end up with smaller water droplets. So whatever radius value you dial in here will determine the size of the drops. I might take this up to 36 and I get big, huge drops like you see. Anyway, I'm going to cancel out because 28 is what I was looking for. Problem at this point, I'll go ahead and zoom in, is that we have these jagged transitions. We need to soften them up, and here's how you do that. Go ahead and click on that Drop Maker layer to make it active. The only way to pull this one off is with a keyboard shortcut, Control-Shift-Alt-E or Command-Shift-Option-E on the Mac. And that goes ahead and copies everything that you're seeing on screen to a new layer. Then go ahead and rename this layer Blur, because in just a moment, it will be blurry. To make it so, go up to the Filter menu and choose Blur, and then choose Gaussian Blur once again. And this time, we're looking for a radius value of 6 pixels. That tends to work out best. And then click OK. And now that we've softened things up dramatically, we need to reinstate some firm edges. And you do that using a levels adjustment layer. So press and hold the Alt key once again, or the Option key on the Mac. Click the black-white circle at the bottom of the Layers panel and choose Levels. This time around, you want to call this guy Sharper, because that's the purpose he's going to serve. And turn on this checkbox once again, and then click OK. And now, here inside this panel, change the first input levels value to 120, and then tab your way over to the final levels value, so press the tab key twice, and change that white point to 145. So 120 at the beginning, 145 at the end. You want to leave your gamma value set to 1.0, and you'll end up with this effect here. Now go ahead and hide the panel. Now I'm going to go ahead and zoom back out, and we want to load what we're seeing here as a selection. That is to say, we're going to select all the stuff that's white and deselect the black stuff, and you do that by switching over to the Channels panel. And then press the Control key or the Command key on the Mac and click on RGB. Now return to the Layers panel. Go ahead and gather up these layers here, sharper through grayness. So click on one layer, shift-click on the other to select that entire range. Let's group them together by going up to the Layers panel flyout menu and choosing New Group from Layers. And I'll go ahead and name this guy Intermediate, because these were the intermediate steps. And then I'll click OK. And now you can turn that group off. We're done with it. Now we want to reverse the selection, because we want to select the stuff that was black. And you do that by going up to the Select menu and choosing the Inverse command. Then we want to create a new layer by pressing Control-Shift-N or Command-Shift-N on the Mac. And we'll call this guy Drops. And then click OK. And now tap the D key to make sure you've got your default colors. Black is the foreground, white is the background. And then press Alt-Backspace or Option-Delete on the Mac to fill the selection with black. And then press Control-D or Command-D on the Mac in order to deselect the image. Up here in the Styles panel, I've loaded up some styles in advance here. And if you have access to the exercise files that are included along with this course, then you can load them up as well by going to the Styles panel flyout menu and choosing Load Styles. And then navigate your way to this folder and click on fluidstyles.asl and click on the Load button. But I've already done that in advance. And now I'll go ahead and apply one of these styles, the first one, which is called Clear, which creates a kind of clear liquid effect, as you're seeing here. And it's a combination of various layer effects working together. You can check out some of the other ones too. We've got lemonade right here. We've got orange soda, which creates a very orange effect indeed. It's pretty over the top. We've got black ink, if you want to check that out. We have radiator coolant, which creates a kind of blue liquid effect. This guy right there is Bordeaux, as if we've spilled some wine on the wood. We've also got Manhattan, the whiskey drink, that is to say. And then finally, we've got this one called Crimson, which creates this ghoulish effect here. But the one I'm looking for is this guy right there. And that, friends, is how you create water droplets absolutely from scratch here inside Photoshop. If you're a member of the lynda.com online training library, then I have a total of 2 follow-up movies ready and waiting for you. In the first one, we take these black blobs that constitute the water, and we add a series of layer effects in order to create these high-contrast reflections. Next, notice how the wood grain moves directly through the water droplets. It really ought to refract, that is, distort around the droplets, as in this case here. And that is something that I'll show you how to do. If you're waiting for next week's free movie, I'll show you how to take these harmless paint splatters and turn them into something messy like ink or something more sinister like blood. Deeks Techniques each and every week. Keep watching.